Sure, the liquor stores are all on the highway.
Puerto Rico is worse.
Good evening. I'm going to call the Board of Selectmen's meeting for April 3rd, 2023 to order. To note, we will be going into executive session in a moment. We will return to open session no later than 6 p.m. Can I get a motion to go into executive session?
Mr. Chair, I move that we go into executive session pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A3, to discuss with respect to collective bargaining for all town unions, and the chair has determined that open session would have a detrimental effect on the town's bargaining position relative to the police patrol and superior police unions.
Second.
Moved and seconded to go into executive session as read. Roll call vote, Larry?
Aye.
Don?
Aye.
Julie?
Aye.
Mary?
Aye.
And I'm an aye.
It's like church in here.
Not when I'm there.
Am I doing what? I'm still,
What parish are you in?
Sorry. Yes. Do you want to go by your time or Apple time? Apple time. All right, I'm ready. Good evening. I'm going to call the Board of Selectmen's meeting for April 3rd, 2023 back to order. We started tonight an executive session to discuss collective bargaining for all town unions. Specifically, tonight was Police Patrol and Superior Police Union. I'm happy to report that we have settled and ratified a contract with the Superior Police Union, leaving only one union left, which would be Police Patrol. So, great news. 7 out of 8 contracts settled before we go to town meeting. And would you please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Before we get started, I'd like to take a moment of silence for the passing of Larry Brophy. Larry Brophy was very important in this town. He served on our planning board for a long time, several committees, and most recently the Housing Trust. So please join me for a moment of silence. Thank you. Take any words from the board, and I'd start with Don. I know he was fond to all of you.
Yeah, and I know it wasn't on, I've said this before, the folks in the room, it wasn't in his obituary, but he was a great guy to be around with the Boston talk and everything, but one of my favorite comments for him is that if you don't know where you're going, any road will take you there, which was shorthand for planning out stuff. And he wasn't just on the planning board. Over the past 20 years, he was on it, but he was also chair of it twice. He was a heck of a great guy. I'm surely going to miss him, and the town really is going to miss him.
Thank you, Don. Larry?
not much more to add, except he's a fellow that we all knew. In fact, I talked to him only, I think, 3 weeks or so. He just gotten into rehabilitation, and we're planning on meeting. It came suddenly, but he will be missed. Don's right.
Mary?
I only knew him a little bit over the last year, but I shared Don's appreciation for his sense of humor. And once in a while, he'd get mixed up and call 137 Calm Ave, which I liked, being a Boston kid.
Thank you. Julie?
Yeah, I really don't have any words because Larry was such a wealth of knowledge and he had such a great sense of humor. I don't even know what to say. We're really going to miss him terribly, and I just loved all of his stories and all of his background. And again, the Boston accent, I at least felt at home.
Via Canada.
Joe?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know, our thoughts go to Nan and his sons at this difficult time, and they reached out for information, and I know any of us that responded, I think they're building a great story to talk about Larry over the coming days with his services. But as you all just said, you know, for me, the thing I thought of, and I told them this, is I know we have the 4 C's on Cape Cod, but he was the 3 C's. And, you know, he was all about children, community, and Canada, and not in that order. And to me, it was the community part. One of my favorite Larry stories is when he decided that he and I were going to talk to the Cape and Islands Veterans Outreach to talk to them about some of their needs, and he insisted on driving. And I told him I could have easily done that, and he said, yeah, but then you wouldn't be a captive audience. And I thought, oh boy, here we go. But the other story with that is, we go into this room, and it's a small group, and we presumably are just all meeting each other for the first time. And sure enough, one of the participants sits down, and Larry looks at him, and he says, you're so-and-so. And the guy says, yeah, how do I know you? I said, we had dinner last week at your neighbor's house. He's my brother-in-law. So I turned to him and I said, is there anybody you don't know? And he said, probably not. And that's one of the stories I'll keep, meaning, you've had a life well lived and a purposeful life when you know so many people and so many people know you. And it's just sad, because he was a good guy, he was a great storyteller, and he really cared about his community and at least gave back. And I think that's just a great legacy. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Yeah, I got to meet Larry about 10 years ago on the first middle school repurpose committee, and now we've had 4 or 5 different names since then. But he taught me early on, and it was something I knew nothing about town politics, and Larry really gave me a lesson. And Joe, it's funny, because he said, no matter what, Michael, I'll always know more people than you. So, and that was related to how we were going to vote.
Yeah,
So, but great guy, and he will be missed.
yeah.
Thank you all. Next up, we're going to go to public comment and announcement. And Mary, do you want to start with the committee vacancies?
Sure. We currently have openings on agricultural, affordable housing, Board of Registrars, the Democrat, capital outlay, community center facilities, conservation, council on aging, accessibility rights, cultural council, energy and climate action, housing committee, historic, planning, real estate and open space, voter information, youth services, and zoning. And I would encourage people to fill out applications. Even if it's not on the list, you never know when we'll have an opening, and we really would love some more participation.
Thank you. Don?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We made an appointment for the Democratic Registrar last week.
Oh,
Yes, we did.
we did. I thought there was another one, but no?
Nope.
Okay,
All right.
thank you.
We do have one request that we mentioned to the public, that motor vehicle excise tax bills have been mailed and they're due on April 23rd, 23. Anyone in the public for public comment and announcement? Joe, anything?
All set, Mr. Chairman.
A motion on the consent agenda.
Mr. Chair, I move that we vote to approve the Board of Selectmen meeting minutes for March 20, 2023, and that we also vote to approve the Assistant Town Administrator's recommendation to grant permission by NSTAR Electric Company doing business as Eversource Energy for the purpose, this is something that Mary should always read and not me, for the purpose to install a 45-foot, is that correct?
Yeah.
Yes.
Plus or minus of 1 to 4 inches conduit, 40-foot of 1 to 3 inch conduit, and one proposed handhold under the road at 1603 Old Queen Anne Road.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye, 5-0. New business, and before we go on to that, one more public comment, and some of it's to this board. The ethics training is, we're supposed to have that done by the 7th, Friday. Any committees that you are a part of, there's still several committee members that haven't taken it, and I'll leave any employee up to Joe. But we have until Friday. Mine's done, just saying.
Show off.
He wouldn't have said it otherwise.
Update from the treasurer collector on tax collection.
So, Mr. Chairman, as our treasurer collector comes forward, it's my pleasure to formally introduce you to Betty Clark McClay, our treasurer collector. Betty, you are more than welcome to go right up here. And Betty has made a tremendous, immediate positive impact, which is not a surprise, but is something that's eternally grateful. We haven't missed a beat with her steady leadership in the treasurer collector's office. So with that, I will turn it over to you, Mr. Chairman, for our treasurer collector to provide you with information.
Well, welcome.
Thank you very much,
Yeah,
I
thank you.
appreciate it.
Jump right in.
So my first update is that tax due date for a motor vehicle is not the 23rd, that's a Sunday, it's actually the 24th, which is a Monday.
Excellent. First statement, and you corrected me. I love it.
So we actually mailed 4 commitments for motor vehicle. 2 were from 2022 and 2 for 2023, totaling 16,976 bills for $2,388,891.82 in tax. So it was a big mailing. On the 24th of March, I sent a list of the 2022 real estate bills that are still outstanding to Capola and Capola. That is the firm that historically they've used here to process the tax, start the tax title processing. So what he's going to do is he'll go through, he'll just research, make sure we have all our books and pages and everything correct. Then what he will do is send out a letter letting them know that they will be advertised. That letter's to go out on April 14th, gives them 2 weeks, a deadline of April 28th to pay. Our target date after that will be to get the advertisement in the newspaper by May 12th, and then actually hopefully lien the properties by June 1st. So right now there are 83 bills on that list for just over $150,000 worth of outstanding receivables for motor vehicle. I did attach a list for you. There were actually 2 2022 omitted real estate bills. They did not get demanded, so I have sent out letters to those 2. They actually didn't get demanded because they were actually issued 2 days or a couple of days after the actual demands went out on the rest of the parcels. For a tax title, we currently, I also provided you with a report of that. We currently have 256 active tax title accounts. It's comprised of $2,479,566.40 in principal, plus $4,307,530.03 in interest. So as you can see, it does not pay to go into tax title. You go from your 14% interest up to your 16% interest, and every single thing that was on that real estate bill is now subject to that 16% interest. I do have good news, though. We did have one more redemption on Friday, so someone paid off their tax title. I also gave you a list of the tax liens that were paid off, and I just started it at July 1st, beginning of the fiscal year, because I wasn't sure when the last report you saw was. So to that list, you can add one more person, the one that redeemed on Friday. And then we have another attorney, Iris Leahy, and she's currently working on 39 parcels, of which 24 are in land court and 15 are not in land court yet. So what we do is cycle a number of accounts to her at a time, and then as she clears them, then we send her more. I have asked her to slow it down a little bit right now because of the budget. I want to make sure that I'm not sure what the cost will be for Capola and Capola for the 2022s to get them leaned. So I just want to make sure that we're within the budget for the legal bills. Other than that, the deputy collector will continue to send out demand notice, we'll be sending some demands, but he'll be sending some warrants, motor vehicle commitments to warrant. He just keeps up with that.
Great, thank you. Questions from the board, Larry?
No, thank you. I was wondering, when you look at the estate tax bills, there's one name that crops up, Sykes, it says a huge amount, I think, forget now, I don't remember, 83,000 or something. Do we prioritize those when we try to collect money, the larger ones? Some page on
So right now, Sykes is actually a 2022, so they're not in tax title yet.
Okay.
So they all have to go together. So it's a process. So the whole group goes together when you're starting your tax
then
title
the next step would be
process.
to prioritize those are all most.
Yeah, so it'll be a bit before. Hopefully, a lot of folks don't like to be advertised, so hopefully
Yeah,
that'll prompt
that
them.
one just pops up because it's such a huge.
Yes,
number.
I agree.
Times,
Yeah,
doesn't
that's a common name on there.
I should probably know this. We probably have had this discussion before, but You have names in the title redemption where you have names, but then you also have the title owners unknown. What's that mean then?
So as of right now, that means that the assessors have not been able to find whoever the owner is,
So you have the name,
and they're being taxed.
but you don't know that they own it? Is that?
I guess that'd be an assessing question, to be honest with you.
Okay, okay.
I haven't followed up with them to ask them what they know about those particular parcels.
Okay. Thank you. That's the only two
All
questions
set?
I have.
Don?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I focused on the Ben Sykes one, too. But that's endemic of a whole different problem. He had a trust, and I'm fairly certain that when his passing occurred, the post office box that the trust was addressed to moved on. Do you have a solid address for him? Because he has a son that probably was a trustee for it. E.g.
I'll check to see, I can check the current bill to make sure that we don't have anything different than what we have. And we can also see if the registry of deeds has anything, if something had changed.
Yeah, that's my point, because people within the trust graduate when people pass away. I mean, that's the whole idea of it for their families.
Typically, the assessors will get some sort of, document that they can update their information.
And please don't go after Mr. T-Mobile until I'm done with the phone here. He's right after Mr. Sykes. I'm assuming you know where they are.
Good.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
This is more thorough than I've seen, so it's really nice to see that kind of progress and effort. Is there anything that you need from us? Some of the things on the Iris Leahy list had some questions.
They did. So
Are
the
those
handwriting-
questions to us or questions to the lawyer, or?
Those are her work notes, which is
Okay.
why I didn't make them public. The notes in the right-hand column, that's my notes. So I took her information. Unfortunately, I didn't have, it was a PDF, so I wasn't able to update it, but I actually put my notes. So I did relay some of that information to her. There were a couple that were actually paid already, that sort of thing. So I did relay that to her, and she had me actually do a couple of redemptions, so. There were a few that I found that were redeemed, or like I had one that only had a 50-cent balance. So they had paid it, but it didn't trigger it to be redeemed because it still had 50 cents. So I went and wrote off the 50 cents and I was able to do the redemption on that one. So we did a little bit of cleaning up. I didn't have a heck of a lot of time to do it, but I have started picking at it, and I've been in touch with Iris, so.
Well, I personally really appreciate your effort on this.
Thank you.
And if there's anything you need from us, please let Joe and come back and see us.
All right, thank you.
Julie?
Yeah, thank you. It's very comprehensive, and I agree. It looks like you've had some good success with getting some payment. I had the Sykes question as well, because I also saw $28,243.15 for 27 Saquatucket Bluffs, I believe it is, unless I wasn't quite sure because it said BLL. So, in any case,
Yep.
it's good to know that we're going after that. So appreciate the information
Of course.
and welcome.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
You mentioned budget at the beginning of this conversation, and it would seem to me now's the time to have that conversation. But with $2 million plus owed and $4 million plus in interest, and our effort to collect owners unknown and solve those mysteries, do you need more money? Because one lawyer is probably not enough at this point.
Yeah, I could always use more money. Well, a big part of the money, I looked back at what was spent last year for Capola and Capola to do the actual taking process, and that was close to $10,000 in itself. I think when we get in a little bit better place, when we're full of staff, I may not need him to do all that work. In the past, some of the places I've worked, I've actually taken it all the way through. I do like the idea of having him definitely review to make sure all the books and pages are correct, because you don't want to spend the money to file and then find out that there was something wrong with the filing. So that's the big trigger for me right now, is that I'm just waiting to see what that bill's gonna be, but yeah, if you wanna be more aggressive, it's gonna cost more money, so.
Joe, can we rely on other legal funds,
Yes.
administrative line item, if they need it?
Correct.
Okay, so the money's there. And there's some on here, there's properties that owe 200,000 that are out in East Harwich, and their owner's known, and they're around, say, the sand pit, which has been a ongoing, we're not sure who owns what where. When do we start looking at those, or have they already been looked at?
The unknown parcels?
Some of no, these ones are actually known, but they show, like, with interest, $200,000 owed to the town on just raw land.
Well,
Systematically going at it from highest to lowest, or just alphabetically, or?
I'm not sure how she has passed them over.
Okay.
So once they're in, tax title, I'm not sure how in the past Iris got what she did get.
Okay.
So this was the latest list that she had for
Okay.
me. And I can certainly, work with her and find out what we can move over next.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any more questions? Joe, you're all set?
I am, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you. My pleasure.
Well, to your
Larry?
comment, are those properties, some years ago, they were still fighting over those properties. Has that all been cleared up now, so we actually do know who owns what?
I think there's a lot of fighting, but some of these actually have map and parcel numbers on them with an
So-
owner.
So we can go after
We
them
could
now,
probably,
regardless of what they're doing.
yeah, we could probably join the fight, because we're not getting paid.
Yeah.
So. All right, discussion on proposed municipal parking lot locations, proposal for electric vehicle charging stations. As you all remember, we had, I think it was Dexcom. I'm probably saying it wrong. Cindy can stand up and correct me if she wants. But there was a proposal related to the municipal parking lot in Harwich Port, and,
Since you said I could, I'm going to.
Go ahead.
It's called EVCON, EVKON.
thank you. So the question came up from several residents, and then I spoke to one of the principals of EVCOM, and the question was asked, is this something that the town wants before we go through this whole process and have people applying and sending in applications and putting budgets together? Is it something that the board is gonna support, or you don't have enough information yet? And we did get at least one letter from a resident to our email addresses this week, who's online now, Bob Cohen, with some interesting points. My negative to the project is the parking spots that are gonna be taken out of the municipal parking lot. I guess I'd have the conversation with the board, do we want someone to go through the whole process? And what do you need to see before they do? And I'll start with Mary, because she's flailing with her hand out.
One of my questions is, I wouldn't have a problem with creating a couple of them if they're open to anyone. So I pull in, there's no other spot but an electric charging station, can I park there? It's not like a handicap spot, I'm guessing. If that were the case, depending on what it cost, I might be interested.
Okay, I will ask that question, Julie.
So, it's an interesting question that you're posing, because there is no fine to park there, but it would kind of defeat the purpose, right? So, I've worked with Cindy and Valerie Bell, and this is a process too, just let me put it that way. This is nothing that's gonna happen immediately. It takes about, I think, roughly a year or so at this point, and it's a grant. So it's not technically costing the town all of the money to put this in. And matter of fact, the feedback from Eversource was that certain area they originally thought they could do, they can't because of the feed. So the spaces are sort of still TBD, correct? And again, this is a process that we're trying to get in the queue for. So I guess, I understand the crunch in parking, so I hear all of you, and I'm not opposed to that train of thought. But to say that the other spots that are at the Tech or, at Shaw's or what, that's kind of the antithesis of what they're trying to achieve, is to create at least a couple of spots through this grant downtown. And we can all argue about who's gonna charge their car there. I don't really think there's any real way to plan on who's gonna charge their car there, because unless you have a car, an electric vehicle, which I do not, you're not probably gonna have one at your house. And if you're visiting and you're renting, doesn't mean that there's one at your rental either. You know, so that is something in the building code moving forward, that every house is gonna have to have some type of electric charging station, whether it be inside or out. But that's not what we currently have. We don't have anything in Harwich Port. This is a grant, so I would say keep an open mind on it and let it go forward.
Thank you, Julie. Don?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm kind of landing where Julie is. The state has mandated that everybody turn over vehicles, and it's not that long a window before they're being required to do that. Personally, everywhere I go, there's things that are happening where rapid pickup or more handicap spaces and electric charging, like at the mall. For 2 spaces, I'm not sure I'm going to get exercise over this, because they got to charge somewhere, and it's not like a gas station where you take 4 or 5 minutes and you're out and you're good. A charge takes a while, even with a higher voltage. So I'd like to be able to at least test the waters out.
Thank you, Don. Larry?
Yeah, I'm skeptical, but I'll try to be open-minded. I like to see what the design is and where they're actually gonna put it. Because I worry about the number of parking spaces, the time. Are we talking about the charging time is like 4 hours, 8 hours? You know, are they rapid? There's a lot of technology improving, but where are we now? You know, it's an 8-hour charge, it's a slow charge, and then why do it? So I'd like to learn a little more.
So the principal AvCom told me today that they did, in fact, create a budget that they're going to send off to Eversource, and then we'll see if we're approved one way or another before we make our final decision. But the budget is being submitted.
Yeah.
Parking is an issue, but the way it was put to me by at least one resident was, would you rather they were on 124 at the park and ride reading a newspaper and charging their car, or in Harwich Port having lunch at Hot Stove or one of the other restaurants and charging their car? So there's a benefit to people coming to the town, and it would be more of an economic
Yeah.
benefit to the town.
We have to learn.
And to Don's point, I hope the state gets smart and looks at some of the other states that their infrastructure is completely failing because of these mandates, and proving that this doesn't actually work. I will not own one. Mary?
Just a question to Julie. I didn't realize this was a grant, so is this not gonna cost us anything?
So the way it's going through Eversource is that they will pay, and Cindy can probably speak to it better than I can in all the particulars, but it's a grant so that they will cover the cost of bringing in the
So there's
electricity.
large amount of money that Eversource has acquired or whatever. They're asking people to get into the queue, so then when it's released, you're at the top of the list. So it doesn't cost the town anything to do any of that piece. You can actually, even after you've gone through, gotten all the info and been decided, okay, maybe yes, maybe no, we still can say no. But it's best to really find out for sure what the cost will be. It can be, I've also spoken with the principal this afternoon too, and roughly not a lot. So it's kind of a good thing to at least go through the exercise like anything before we say no. Because what's nice about this, if we do decide to do it, there's an app out there that anyone that has an electric car, it's, I think, where's my charging in Cape Cod? So if they're staying and they've rented a home, or they've just bought a home, but they don't have, like Julie said, an electrical charging unit at the house, well, they know the closest one to them is X, Y, and Z. So, you know, they could be having a cup of coffee at Cape Roots while they're charging the car. They could be going into any of the stores or any of the businesses and giving back to the community. So it's a nice benefit as the age keeps moving ahead. So just my little take.
Thank you. Bob, we're not making any action on this tonight other than to go forward, but if you'd like to say a few words, go ahead.
Sure. Good evening, Mr. Chair and members of the board. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I'm Bob Cohen from Pleasant Street, and I'd like to just go over a few of the points from my email that I sent you yesterday. I realize now that I may have confused the issue a bit and or buried the lead, because my main point is simply that the municipal lot is a problematic location for the proposed charging stations. They would reduce the number of generally available spaces, and the spillover would end up on nearby streets. The impact would be still greater if there were to be additional stations down the road. I think we all know how tight parking already is in Harwich Port and how it affects nearby neighborhoods. In particular, the streets north of Route 28 where I live, which I'm most concerned about, are the only ones with on-street parking in the village center. And anyone who's been on Cross Street during the summer has probably seen how difficult on-street parking can make things. In any case, I'd hope we could find a more suitable location than the already heavily used municipal lot. In other towns, private lots are often used for public charging stations. I would think that the Stop and Shop Plaza in East Harwich, for just one example, might be a great alternative location with nearby facilities for food, shopping, and running errands, convenient to the highway, and much like the arguments for bringing money or business into town, this would bring business into town in a different part of town. There are also a number of other underutilized lots that might be used and have less of an impact on the surrounding community and neighborhood. As far as I know, Ms. Kavanaugh, what I've read, and it's only what I've seen on the internet, is most, if not all, EVs come with portable charging, level 1 chargers. They can also be easily obtained on Amazon, and you can just plug it into a standard outlet. So I think there's a real limited need. I don't know how much need there is and how much demand there is. I think it's a moving target. The technology is rapidly advancing. The rates of adoption are rapidly advancing. Usage patterns are changing. And I think it would be a shame to take away some spaces that have been hard fought over for a number of years when there are other alternatives available. So that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bob. Anyone else? All set?
Yep.
Moving on to C, discussion 2023 annual town meeting warrant articles. Joe, it's safe to say we can dispatch number 1, vote to place additional articles? There's nothing else we're contemplating at this hour, is there?
Correct.
Okay,
Excuse me, correct, there are none.
okay, so then we've got vote to support and recommend articles for 2023 town meeting warrant. There's 2 articles left for the full board. Article 25, which is the CPA article related to the Housing Trust. And that is in the amount, they went from 250,000 to 500,000. Do we want to get a motion before we start comment on that? And this would be a vote to accept and adopt Community Preservation Act funding Harwich Affordable Housing Trust Fund in the amount of $500,000.
I move that we accept and adopt the revised language for that.
Second.
Okay, moved and second. Any discussion?
Only that we very much appreciate Mary Michael's request to the CPC, and they had a very good and in-depth discussion and agreed to move ahead.
Thank you, Larry. Mary?
And I would just like to thank the CPC for being gracious in doing the reconsideration, and I thought it was a pretty good conversation at that meeting. There are some things that we need to do going forward, but we can deal with that later.
Don? Anything? My thanks to the CPC committee, too. It was a very thoughtful conversation. It was a long conversation, and there was a lot of frustration amongst the members of CPC committee for what they see as lack of communication or an incomplete application. I think we have a very different view on what it is than they do, but they're the ones that vote it, so we have to get better. And I think next year we did, Mary and I made a pledge to communicate a lot better with them next year. And I would say that's 95% of the committee that I can say those positive things about. Don?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do want to point out one thing here, because it will continue to be irreconcilable if they continue to ask the question the way they're asking it. If part of the submission has to be to say how the money is going to be spent specifically on a project basis, there's no way to do that. That's the whole point of aggregating the money into the account. I mean, you could say the types of things that would be spent, but absent an actual project where we're asking for supplemental monies for a contract, you can't answer that question.
And Don, I appreciate that. I think looking forward, though, if we were to just show them what we have done and that we're making progress and that we're moving the needle forward on affordable housing and showing the responsibility, my own sense anyway is I think that they would at that point get it and support it more as long as we were communicating that.
No, I would agree. Listening to the meeting and private discussions, I don't think, Don, they're actually asking for what you've indicated. Maybe they have in the past, but now they want a general sense of where we're going.
Okay.
Mary?
And I don't see why we couldn't, as Don suggested, make a statement about potential things. We could be looking to make another purchase, should it be available. We could be looking to do some, what do you call them, buybacks or buy-downs.
Buy-downs, yeah.
If we gave a list of the thoughts of things, I think that would be helpful.
We'll see.
All set? All right, next one would be Article 37, and it
We
was,
need to
Did
vote.
we
You need
vote?
a vote.
oh, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, 5-0.
Thank you.
It's a vote, and I so declare it.
What are you going to do when Mike Ford gets in the same room with you?
Compete. Article 37, which is the ADU bylaw, the accessory dwelling unit bylaw. And before we get started on that, I would say that that meeting also went very well. And the planning board did a great job. Several people spoke, and then it was unanimously voted
I think so.
to support.
I think it was unanimous.
Yeah, I think
Yeah, so, well, we'll call it unanimous anyway. I've made mistakes before. Can I get a motion on this, and then we'll get into further discussion? And this is Article 37, amending zoning bylaw, Chapter 325, Article 5, use regulations.
Has it been placed on the warrant yet? Or is
It
that,
has been placed, so this is just to accept and adopt.
I move that we accept and adopt.
Moved in second. Any further discussion? Don?
Yeah, because I did speak up at one of the prior meetings. There've been a bunch of iterations of the language. I'm hoping we're at the right spot now. Everybody seems to be happy with the current language of it, but there were like 4 different changes over 6 weeks, and the public really has the right and the opportunity to see this and vote on it, so I would never recommend that we just turn it down.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Mary?
I'd just like to compliment Paul, our planner, who did a really good job, I thought, at that meeting, as he has at previous meetings, presenting this and answering questions. I think he's represented us very well.
Thank you. Julie?
I'm just delighted to see it on here, and I'm glad that the planning board meeting went well. I found the process slightly frustrating in the sense of trying to convey the information, and that this board worked about getting behind it, and ultimately different scenarios were put out there about Airbnbs, et cetera, when the language was always the language. And ultimately, it was us trying to clean up Harwichizing this language, so I feel like we finally got there and we made progress, and I hope things go well at town meeting.
Larry, anything?
Only that I agree, we made progress. It's not gonna solve housing, and there was probably more discussion than we thought was gonna happen, but it is, but we've done something positive, let's take it to town meeting. So,
Excellent. Anything from anyone in the audience? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, 5-0. Town meeting article. So Julie, I spoke to you briefly tonight. Article 1 through 54 and 60 through 62 are all the articles with the exception of the petition articles. And I think it's important and you relayed you think it's important to get your name on the votes.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that.
Joe, how do you propose, Julie, if you support 1 through 54 and 60 through 62, Joe, how would we make the motion just to add Julie to that, accept and adopt?
Pretty much what you just said. You would identify the articles, and that you would want it reflected that Select Board Member Kavanaugh agrees. And then we could update it.
This is for Selectman Kavanaugh to support Articles 1 through 54 and 60 through 62.
Mr. Chair, given the fact that I believe that Julie is going to support this, I would move that we add an affirmative vote on all the noted articles and add her name to the affirmative.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Julie?
Depends on Julie, actually.
Anyone else? All in,
Just read
The
them
only
all again.
discussion.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, 5-0. Thank you. Joe, do you want to go through your memo of the changes to the warrant?
Certainly. Thank you. Good evening, folks. So what you have in front of you, and which would be added to the website, is an errata sheet. Just identifying mostly scrivener's errors, and then confirming quantum of vote. So if you look at my memorandum in front of you, on the backside, it can tell you that the Finance Committee Chairman had some changes to their recommendations. I will tell you that I expect that their recommendations may further change. For example, their number under Article 4, they had a typo where it was $3 million higher on raise and appropriate, but that was also a stale dated number that you can now see on under Article 4. So you can see the corrections that were made on the errata sheet, and then most importantly, council has reviewed the document and identified under those 9 items various articles, more than just 9, where a greater than majority vote are required. So I can certainly read these into the record, Mr. Chairman, however you'd like to proceed.
Please read them into the record.
Excuse me, would you like me to do all of the corrections? Or the quantum of votes?
Quantum of votes.
Thank you. So the following articles require a 2/3 vote. Article 11, 19, 20, 21, 37, 38, 39, 42, 43, 44, and 48 all require a 2/3 vote. Article 50 requires a 4/5 vote. That's the unpaid bills from prior year. And Article 61 would also require a 2/3 vote. I would just caution to say that council is still evaluating whether the ADU bylaw as presented does require a 2/3. It may only require a straight majority, but out of an abundance of caution, we're presently going with the 2/3 vote.
Thank you. Questions, Larry?
No, that's interesting about the ADU. Is that because you've seen that maybe a zoning article?
Correct, it's a zoning article, but it may comport with former Governor Baker's statute change, that if it's related to affordable housing, it may require a straight majority rather than a 2/3.
Thank you.
Don?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was wondering the same thing. I was talking with Paul about that during the course of this. And in your conversations with council, his understanding was that if multi-unit housing was 3 or more, rather, an ADU wouldn't probably qualify for that, but just passing that along.
Sure.
Mary?
No questions.
Julie?
I'm comfortable with whatever council tells us.
Okay. So we're all good with the changes to the warrant, and Joe, we will get that on the warrant tomorrow as voted onto the website with the errata sheet, so that
Yes.
people understand
Yep,
the difference.
correct.
Please. Joe, do you want to go on and start to discuss Article 40? Amend the regional agreement between the towns of Chatham and Harwich.
So, thank you, Mr. Chairman. If you look at that article, and for those following along,
Page
Because-
56.
thank you.
You're bringing this up, I presume, because Dr. Carpenter had some questions last time. Is that correct?
Well, he had some questions last time, and he didn't give us what we need to complete the warrant.
Okay.
So We could go ahead and put what Chatham has in their warrant, or we can indefinitely postpone this, or remove it from the warrant until next year when we have more information. But Joe, go ahead and finish your explanation.
Thank you. So Article 40 is listed on the errata sheet. If you look at the document and the middle sentence, which says, "As voted by the Monomoy Regional School District Committee," this was Attorney Giorgio's effort to create an article, and he said, based on his understanding of both the agreement and how the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, or DESE, operates, it should have reflected the date that the school committee voted to send it over. However, 2 weeks ago, Dr. Carpenter informed both me and my counterpart in Chatham that the review by DESE was one that, unless they could convince them otherwise, DESE was taking the view that these are not mere minor edits as was presented. DESE takes a much stronger view to it. Knowing that the town of Chatham closed their warrant 2 weeks ago Friday, and knowing that we need an effort to close ours this evening, I reached out to Dr. Carpenter. We were waiting on, as you can see in the article, a reference to Appendix D. There is no such appendix, and that was supposed to be a one-pager that would explain what the towns were being presented. And I believe we have yet to receive anything to be placed on file with the Office of the Town Clerk, as it indicates in both towns' articles. So we have two options. I can certainly strike the reference to Appendix D, as there will be none, and you can leave the article in. It can be indefinitely postponed, or we could withdraw it. If we withdraw Article 40 and Chatham were to go forward, nothing's going to move forward because both towns have to do it. So we do not have anywhere near the amount of information we should have at this time. And a belt and suspenders approach, my recommendation would be for me to strike the reference to Appendix D, and that this article be indefinitely postponed but kept in the warrant.
Don?
This must be irony night. Of all the last 3 years we were discussing language changes, this is one I would have been prepared to support, because it's taking out the obvious, a transition from when you first start electing people and how long it is, how you create staggered terms and all that stuff. It really does seem like a housekeeping article. I would like to strike the language and leave it in. We don't have to make a recommendation, do we? We do.
We don't have to.
I'd rather put it on DESE's plate, let them vote one way or the other, and if it goes through two towns, explain to us why this doesn't work for them.
So you want to leave it in?
Striking the reference to
striking
the
reference
appendix.
to D. Larry?
Yeah, I think as we talked last time, there's not a downside for us not moving ahead on this at the moment. I mean, the school, Monomoy's still going to function. They're going to pay their bills. And so I would, we'll go there, but, so I would rather just postpone it rather than clutter the system. And
Remove it from the
remove
warrant.
it from the warrant, and bring it back next year, we have more time, and, you know, as Don says, it's not, there's nothing major in there, it's mainly grammatical, so I think I'd rather choose, if we're gonna argue about something, I'd rather argue about something else.
We got plenty to argue about this year, too. So I think we're good. Mary?
I agree with Don. I would like to keep it in the warrant. It's strictly housekeeping, as Don described. It's taking out all that first year you do this. There's nothing of substance in there. And if it gets through, we're done with it. We have bigger fish to fry with the school district next year, and I'd like to not still have this swirling.
Julie?
I guess I have one question. How did Chatham put it on, and how did they get the information to put it on?
So they were relying upon information that they had received as far back as February 8th, because they wanted to have something in there. At the moment that they were closing their warrant, Dr. Carpenter expressed optimism that we would hear by the end of that week from DESE.
Okay.
We've heard nothing since then, and again, it's just that we're on different schedules.
Thank you. I'm not opposed to leaving it on. I agree to if we can get it handled, but I obviously would like to have some more information.
Just so Larry's not alone, I'd say take it out. Joe, go ahead.
Thank you. I just want to emphasize that my recommendation for keeping it in is to just not do harm to the warrant that's going to be finalized tomorrow, because of pagination and everything else. But leaving it in and absent those required elements, I still don't see that we're going to be in a position to make a positive motion on it. Meaning there is no documentation on file with the town clerk's office. There was no notice of any information of any sort in the warrant itself.
Don?
And to what Joe was just saying, it's not inconceivable, because we do have meeting right up before town meeting. It's not inconceivable that we vote to recommend that the motion is indefinite postponement. But it is going to mess up everything that succeeds that in the warrant. Everything that comes after would have to be renumbered, and I'm not sure if that's even worth it to us.
And my overall premise is that I wouldn't want anyone here or watching to think that by keeping it in there, that means there's going to be a positive action. I think it's highly unlikely that we'll have all the elements required to make a positive motion.
Okay. So we'll leave it as is and strike the reference to D.
Thank you.
Okay. Go ahead, Mary.
We already voted to accept and adopt. Do we have to undo that?
Can I get a motion to reconsider
So moved.
But you could do that through motion,
at town meeting?
right before town meeting. We can
Well-
vote as a board the hour before and
Yeah, the
make a
meeting, the last
motion to
meeting.
indefinite
So
postpone.
we don't have to do that now.
I think we do it now
I
since we're gonna
I
change
do,
things.
so it's in the, you can change that in the warrant, right?
Joe, go ahead.
Sure, but the motions, according to our charter, are typically made by Finance Committee. They've indicated that they have insufficient information, and I would expect that they would be making a motion to indefinitely postpone. Unless somebody had a positive motion, it's going to die just on that. So the fact that you've accepted and adopted it and placed it in the warrant in good faith should not cause anyone to misunderstand that it's hollow.
Well, I would
Gotcha.
just assume remove our support.
Yeah.
Well, I'd like to remove my support. We're not taking it out of the warrant, so that stays in the warrant, but what we're at right now is do we support or
I
not
do
support?
too. I move we reconsider our support.
Second,
Okay, moved in second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Well,
Aye.
Okay, 4-1.
So, Mr. Chairman?
Julie still wants to be part of this.
Yeah, she's here.
I swear I heard her.
She's here tonight.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Julie. So we got 3 ayes and 1 no.
Yeah, so this doesn't impact you in any way in terms of any other changes? If we withdraw our support, do you have to make changes anywhere else?
No, and I was just going to play parliamentarian. If you adopt the motion made by Select Board Member Ballantyne, you are then just opening up for discussion.
That's right.
So you still have another step to take.
we have to make a motion,
To discuss.
Right, but I'm still waiting on Julie's vote, and I'm not going forward.
Before she goes there?
All right. Don, more discussion.
Yeah, just really quickly, this is for reasons that I personally have, because I have been negative about slipping through language that wasn't intended. So I just want to go on record that I'd be more than willing, if this was possible to happen, to go on record as saying I'd be supporting of it.
Thank you, Don.
So, back to the vote.
Yeah, where are you?
I'm fine, I'm fine with pulling back the support because we don't have the information. I just wanted to make sure it wasn't gonna impact the warrant in any way, so
So you're a yay.
I'm a yay.
4-1. It's a vote,
It's a
and I
vote,
so
so I
declare.
To change the recommendation.
No, I believe that was 4-1 to reconsider.
Reconsider.
Now we need a
Consideration
motion
passes.
to,
Thank you, Larry.
Which would be striking.
And we don't have to
similar.
make a positive motion now, Joe.
Well, then,
If somebody makes a positive motion to support it, then it would be in there. If
But
not,
you
it
still have
won't.
to reconsider it.
Go ahead.
may I help?
We need,
Yeah, please.
I
Yes,
think we need
please
to,
help.
I think I need to make a motion that we can vote against it, so it doesn't show up in the warrant that way.
Right.
I would agree with Selectman Ballantyne. I think he's spot on.
So let me just make a positive motion. I move we accept and adopt the changing of the language of the regional school language of Chatham.
Article
Recommend
4.
indefinite
Article
postponement
40.
is what you meant.
Well, I think we have to make, and then we vote against it, and then we don't, doesn't show support, right?
Can't make a negative motion. So he's got to make a positive motion.
Making a positive motion that we can vote down.
So,
is what I'm
a
trying to-
motion to indefinitely postpone is a positive motion.
Okay.
It's not,
Okay, I move we
feeling negative or
definitely.
positive, it's an affirmative
Okay,
action.
let me do that. I move we indefinitely postpone Article 40.
I'll second it for discussion.
Okay, Mary, discussion.
By doing that, if we get everything we need by town meeting, can we then support it?
In theory, yes. Again, my concerns remain that council has advised that the proper language for the town of Harwich is to indicate that the changes that were adopted by the school committee were then transmitted to the selectmen, and further, those changes in full are on file in the clerk's office, and a synopsis of which is within the warrant. So given that later this week we're going to go to print, you're not going to have any of those required elements.
Okay.
And I think that's going to cause council to recommend to the moderator that it's appropriate to indefinitely postpone.
Any
Okay,
further
got it.
discussion? All in favor of the motion to indefinitely postpone?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
No, I'll go along.
You're going along with it? 5-0?
I would have voted for it.
Right, all right. 5-0.
Thank you.
All right, is there any other articles any board member wants to discuss? I have a couple more, so I just didn't
Yeah.
want to keep jumping out in front.
Certainly the capital,
Yes.
we can talk about that.
Yeah, I will start with Article 23. Joe, did we get any clear answers as to what the problem was with the language? And problem may be the wrong word. CPA housekeeping expense. Is it the word housekeeping, or did you get any definitive answer as to what was wrong with this article?
Could you just give me the page number so I can get right to that?
Article,
27.
Thank you.
thank you, Mary. This
Well,
was,
I think,
this is
Mr.
one
Chairman-
that changed.
Sure, to answer the question, I could first explain the process. So, when council had reviewed all of the Community Preservation Act articles, which start on page 27, and I think carry on through the end of page, or the middle of page 35, council looked at it from a standpoint of looking, understanding the statute, so the Community Preservation Act itself, and then through Chairman David Nixon, he identified a member of CPC, Mary Maslowski, who was authorized to work with council. So Ms. Maslowski and Attorney Giorgio worked on these articles. When there was some pushback on the language and the layout of Article 23, my understanding is that the explanation provided by council was acceptable and sufficient for Ms. Maslowski. That's not to put it on her. I want to thank her for her efforts in this regard. And I can tell you that every one of the CPA articles was reviewed, written, and endorsed by council.
Thank you. Questions from board members? Don?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm trying to muse over what this means. The community housing, I'm assuming that's a bucket. Is that actually jive with the new sum that's in the Housing Trust CPC request?
Go ahead.
Thank you. So, Mr. Chairman, my understanding is you can see what we can refer to as the 4 buckets on the top of page 28. Additionally, council has opined that the Community Preservation Committee can also rely upon undesignated reserves. So my understanding is, as part of their conversation, a spreadsheet was created that tracks all of that information. Additionally, if you look at the updated language for Article 25, it makes reference to the Community Housing Reserve, but also undesignated reserves as well. So it's not that that one bucket by itself, the 197, I believe, or 198, that's not understood to be the full amount available. These rather are the appropriations that are being made specifically for those buckets in fiscal year '24. They can rely upon additional funds available to them.
Those are minimal.
Going back to Don?
Yeah, that's kind of like
Then
as
Mary, then
clear as
Larry.
mud to me. Just in English, the $500,000 is the number that we're designated. They have in excess of that without recapturing any money at all from the housing trust, another 198,000 that they're reserving for that bucket. Is that what you're saying?
Go ahead.
So to try to be clear, what I'm trying to say is, in addition to those four sources, there is a source known as undesignated funds. They are literally undesignated. So perhaps if we look at Article 25, the way that it's been broken out is for the $500,000 that was approved, there is $14,351.51 from what is known as the undesignated reserves, $210,000 from the Community Housing Reserve, $84,448.49 from the fiscal year 2024 estimated revenue undesignated reserve, and $191,200 from the fiscal year 2024 estimated revenue community housing reserve, all of which totals up to $500,000. So Article 23, if we read what council has written there, is to appropriate or reserve for future appropriations the following sums of money. So 23 acts as adding more money to buckets that already exist.
Thank you. Don?
If I'm still a little unclear, I don't expect 150 people plus to be clear. They are taking, just really, yes or no, the money that's being designated in this way is not coming from a recapture of a prior year for the trust, correct? Yes or no?
You mean there's the trust? Let me see if I can answer it. You're asking if the trust is giving some money back.
Are we debiting a prior year in order to build this amount, or is this just from the undesignated reserve period? That's all it's from.
The answer is no.
I can't answer that.
Well, the answer is no.
This is the same way we've done this article every year for the last,
If I may, the CPA requires us that, I think it's 10% of the total amount we get. 10% each goes into the three categories we have here. So this is an annual appropriation based on this year's accounts. And then so at least 70% of the money, they could designate all that 70% to recreation, they could give it all to housing.
I'm aware of that. I just mean if
So
they
this
can't go
adds up.
backwards.
And this is not going backwards, this is just this year's appropriations.
Okay, that's
set? Mary?
All set.
Julie?
I'm all set.
Larry, anything?
No, thanks,
You good?
I'm good.
Okay. Go ahead, Mary.
Just one question is, do we know why finance is no recommendation?
We didn't receive anything other than that explanation.
What's that?
The explanation is all we were made aware of regarding that. So we haven't heard directly why they're
Okay,
holding off for additional information.
okay, thank you.
Well, I know at least one member of the CPC committee questioned exactly the question that I asked of Joe to start this meeting, or this topic, which was why did the language change from what was originally before CPC to the article? Why did our council change it? And Joe gave us that explanation.
Okay,
All right, I have, make sure I'm getting down there. Article 15, capital plan, and Joe, I guess this is a question on formality. So, it's interesting, and actually, it's not interesting to me, but it's probably interesting to town meeting, and those that are trying to be confused. How do we have no positive motion on the capital plan from the finance committee? And if the board doesn't make a positive motion, am I correct in saying that we will then return $7+ million to the free cash for the next year, making it 12 million or so?
Was that a rhetorical question? And was
Well,
that
that's
directed
what I
towards
think
me?
my answer is, but them making no positive motion,
No. You can still make a positive.
so we, the Board of Selectmen, would have to make the positive motion.
That's a majority position.
I'm interested by the thought process in that, given that they answered their own question in Article 16 related to capital expenses, and it really comes down to 204 Sisson Road, which we've already had the conversation that question can be divided So if they have a question about the capital at 204 Sisson Road, they could have dealt with it in Article 16 instead of playing around with a normal
Yeah.
capital article that we have, and it just, par for the course, I guess, in how this year has gone. Larry, any questions on Article 15?
No, I'm just hoping that discussions, they'll have the proper discussions so we don't have to have a long discussion town meeting at this point.
Don?
That's what I said. It's a majority position of the board to make that kind of motion.
Right. Mary?
And I don't know why finance is taking issue with capital outlay, who puts a lot of work into this. I don't understand that.
I think the sense of the year has been they want to be the finance director, the Board of Selectmen, and CPC. Julie?
Yeah, no, I have similar questions to some of these articles, even Article 12, which the school stipend, not to get off track, but they added some language. I mean, I went to their meeting to describe it, and then I'm surprised to even see a few people vote against it when they indicated they were for it, so. I'm a little confused by Finance Committee this year, agreed.
Anything further on 15? 16, Joe. I have been asked, and I hope we can provide to other than the group of people that are clearly against 204 Sisson Road, and they're using the town meeting and these articles as a weapon, can we get a breakdown of what work we're contemplating with this year's 1.928 million or whatever it is, instead of just having a line item that says,
The quick answer is, every one of these applications and every one of the items in the 5-year plan has a corresponding application. It's a one-pager, fairly straightforward, and it's a slight modification of the forms that have been used in years past. Those materials have and remain available publicly. I can reproduce them in any way that the board wants. I don't recommend adding them to the warrants, because I think that's far too cumbersome. But I also want to put out there that my pledge that I've made to this board and to the town is I'd be more than happy to sit down with anybody at any time to explain why every item that the board has supported should be supported at town meeting. And that, it certainly includes the almost full year work of the Capital Outlay Committee to present this plan. So we have all of that information. I'll continue to provide it. And it's going to be my effort over the next 29 days till town meeting to get out and about and explain everything.
okay, specific to this, since this was the one called out, does the board want to see that detail on that article in the warrant, or is just having it ready to read to town meeting enough? Don?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think just having it is enough. A few years ago, we were in a position where they were asking simple questions about how much borrowing is on our homes, what are we looking at, and we were not in a position to answer them. As long as you have those sheets and somebody asks a question and we have an answer, a ready answer for it, that's fine. I mean, it's real late in the game to be messing around with this, but have the backup.
Joe?
Thank you. I believe the comments of the previous speaker weren't related to me and my role as town administrator. So as one of my ongoing efforts to demonstrate why I would want you to continue to support me in this role, and it's why I track town meeting literally every day that I go to work, is I can assure you that I can speak to every article and I can speak to every cent that I'm recommending through the motions that I will help draft for that purpose. I know every cent that's being spent. So I wouldn't be doing my job to the standard that you and everyone else should expect if I couldn't answer these questions. And I'm very much motivated by the last town meeting that I participated in as a civilian. And that was 4 years ago. And since then, I've taken it very much to heart, and that's why I track the days. The most important thing we all do culminates in the first business day in May at town meeting. And so I can speak to everything in any manner in which the board wants me to.
Thank you. Will you work with council to have a positive motion made up on the
It's already been
ones that?
constructed.
Thank you. Don? And then
Thank you,
Mary?
Mr. Chair. Don't read into it. I was just saying that generically, there was a town meeting where we didn't have answers. As long as you have those sheets that you're talking about, we're fine.
Great. Mary?
I was just going to comment that I think we've already in fact seen some of the numbers in back of this 1.9.
Correct.
We've talked about that when Kara has been here and talked about plans for the building.
And if I may, above and beyond that, you had that material as point of reference at your joint required meeting in December,
Yeah.
whereby Rich Larios and I presented the plan. And anyone that's tracked the capital outlay would have seen that in our materials.
So it's just going to be a repeat of
Correct.
what we've already
Correct,
discussed.
yep. And if I could just add one further point, I understand one of the many roles that I have is to try to give comfort to the taxpayers of the town that we're asking them for money, and in exchange, we're gonna have something of value that should be for the benefit of everybody in the town. If we don't meet that mark, town meeting votes against it, and we move on. But I do want to make sure we recognize the work of the Capital Outlay Committee, because they took the message from me and the board to get started early, and they put in tremendous effort and deliberation. And so if anything goes wrong, the town administrator should bear that, and I would bear it. But I wouldn't want people to misunderstand. They did their work, and they're ready to do their work again when town meeting starts up again.
Thank you. Julie?
No, I don't have any comments beyond that. That's what I would anticipate.
Larry?
Nothing further.
Okay. Don, anything further? That's it for me. Anyone else with anything?
Just the one on, the water one on the private wells has been dropped, correct?
Yeah.
That is
Yes.
nowhere.
It's not
Correct.
in there.
Yes.
Thank you.
And it just may, that was a general bylaw, there's only one related to water now.
Okay, thank you.
Motion to.
Not yet. Joe, I had one more, since we're using the word housekeeping. Article 56, the plastic reduction ban. It says 1 yea, 4 nays. Julie was not there, so it would be 1 and 3.
Sorry, can you tell me a page number again?
Article, I don't know. Article
So page
56.
70?
It's at 105 in our packet on your computer. What's a green mattress, by the way?
A what?
So if there,
When
we're
it's left
talking about
outside,
the
it's gonna
vote
rain.
under page 70, it now reads 1 yea, 3 nay. So I think that was one of the,
I think you got
Corrections.
correct.
That was one of the corrections.
yep.
Plastic.
So if you look on page 70 of what you have in front of you now,
And the one.
it
Okay.
reflects a 1-3 vote.
Thank you, and let me just make sure. Okay, so we don't need a motion until we get to vote to close, right? Okay, so additional materials to be included in the warrant. The only thing I had, and this is another one that's come up with the public and seems to be another bone of contention, and I know you have it in Appendix B, Joe, but the new positions, does it make sense for us to put an estimated cost in there like we do with everything else? You have it, you've broken down what it is, you've referred to the line item where it goes up, but to simplify it for the public, what would be the pleasure of the board? Do we want to add that up or leave it as is? I'll start with Larry.
Mr. Chairman, can I interrupt and be
Go
part of
ahead.
that conversation? I would be leery of changing anything under Article 4 as it appears in the warrant and in your appendix. Rather, I think one of the things we could rely upon, we are still looking to do the motions book, which is something that gets prepared after the warrant's gone to print. So any additional information that the board wants could either be a part of a motions book, or you could have a motions book with the recommended motions and then additional material. And so that way we can still get more out there, but I wouldn't want to put an estimated cost in, because I would tell you that any of the costs related to benefits are incorporated already in the semi-fixed and fixed costs. To me, adding an estimate feels like fudging the numbers. Whereas what I can say under Appendix B at the bottom, these are the positions, these are the lines where they come into play, and generally speaking, the benefits fall under the semi-fixed and fixed costs.
Thank you, Joe. Larry, anything?
No, I think your comments you're receiving, Michael, are probably because that statement may not be as clear as it should be. But I agree with Joe. I'm not sure how much we can improve it, and I think the better, I'd leave it alone and be prepared to discuss that at town meeting and defend it there.
Okay. Don?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I agree with Larry. I mean, it's a little late to be messing around with language now, but again, another one of those circumstances, you don't control town meeting. People get up, they ask questions, and make sure that we have that available if they do specifically say, well, how much is it going to cost to do the building person, or how much is it? And then you give an estimate.
Okay. Mary?
You know, I didn't pick this up when I reviewed it the last time. I thought we had an actual list in there, you know, in the explanation of the positions.
Appendix,
Didn't we have-
Appendix
Appendix
B.
B.
Where is Appendix B? Do we have that?
Good, yeah, at the very, very end. Last couple pages.
It's under, there's a enhancement of services, additions to staffing.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, there it is. Okay, sorry. That's
good?
fine.
Good.
Yep.
Julie?
I'm good.
Okay, I have nothing else.
Mr. Chairman, very
Oh.
quickly though, if I could, I do want to emphasize that, and I think you would have had this in a previous version, but if you actually look at the explanation under Article 4, starting on page 11, it's 2 full paragraphs in the explanation itself, and it directs the reader to then look at Appendix B. So I am hopeful that there's abundant information readily available in addition to what we provide.
Okay, thank you. All set? Anyone have any discussion on the 2024 operating budget? Larry?
None.
Don?
Nope.
Mary?
Nope.
Julie?
Nope.
Can I get a motion then for D, vote to close and sign the 2023 annual town meeting warrant?
I so move.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion?
Mr. Chairman, if I
Go ahead.
just very quickly, I mentioned it before, but I don't want the opportunity to pass. So as you reach this stage of closing the warrant and signing the warrant, I want to continue to emphasize that what you are presenting by these actions to the town is a balanced budget that is within our means, meaning we have the funding sources readily available. We are not maxing out on any one source, and we remain in strong financial shape. The warrant that you're about to close also delivers money to our reserve accounts. And I've already had conversations with the Department of Revenue and with our auditors because I'm hyper-focused on our superb AAA bond rating, and those are the kind of actions that the bond market responds to. We never want to do anything that puts that bond rating in jeopardy, and conversely, we want to continue to do the best practices. So you have in this warrant a balanced budget that I think judiciously relies upon various funding sources, which I can explain in detail, but also accomplishes building up our reserves as we enjoy labor harmony across our collective bargaining agreements, as we add strong programs for youth of our town, seniors in our town, and everybody in between, so that I want to take this moment for you to take a moment, because that's what you're bringing forward to the voters. A balanced budget that is sensible, that will certainly engender a lot of discussion. I would be disappointed if it didn't. That is the beauty of town meeting. But I think we'd be remiss if we didn't say that. We have a solid document built on solid financial foundation, and one that I think folks can be proud of as we go through that process. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. And the intention will be to put article discussion on the next few agendas, so that any article we want to discuss, or any article anyone else wants to discuss, can come in and discuss it with us. But for educational purposes, it will be on the agenda until town meeting.
And to clarify, the motion was to close the warrant and sign it.
Yes. And all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, 5-0. Thank you.
Thank you.
And now I would take a motion on vote to approve and sign 2023 election warrants.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, 5-0.
Thank you.
Approve 2023 seasonal common viculars license renewal for Sunday School Inc., DBA Sunday School Ice Cream, 606 Route 28.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion?
Took away my whole motion.
I'm trying to save you.
Thank you.
Mary,
Who made the motion?
Don.
Dawn
Thank you.
did, Harry
I
seconded.
remember it vividly.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, 5-0. All right, this one we'll have a little discussion on. Discussion and possible vote to approve a 2023 seasonal on-premise liquor license renewal for Chase Escape, Cape Cod, LLC DBA The Summer House Cafe, Route 126, or number 126, Route 28. And in our packet tonight, we have memos from the Building Department, Fire Department, and the Board of Health. So the request is to renew their seasonal on-premise liquor license. Discussion, and I'll start with Mary.
I have no interest in renewing anything until they meet the requirements set forward by our departments.
Larry?
Agreed. Nothing's changed since we last discussed it.
Don?
I'll be more brutal. Did I miss something? Did I have a place to actually operate? Because there's nothing approved. There's no septic, there's no fire safety, there's no nothing. And they have yet to exercise even one day of the original license, even with a renewal that was subsequent to that.
Julie?
Agreed. I mean, when I saw that, I thought that something had happened, something had changed, but nothing has changed, so there's no point in having a license.
Joe, anything to add?
You just may want to ask if there's anybody appearing through GoToMeeting
I'm
who
getting there.
wishes to be heard.
Thank you. Mary?
One other procedural question. Can we declare that they can't come before us until they meet those requirements?
I would say no. I mean, if they request a conversation with the board, I don't know why we wouldn't have it. I don't know how, I would agree with the rest of the board members. The Board of Health, which I'm trying to pick it up just so I can read the one line. The Board of Health says they cannot open, and I believe those are the words. Let me see if I can find it.
They haven't done anything with their septic, they've done nothing.
Right. They've given them a date of June 2023 to install a new septic system. So, Mary, to answer your question, I don't think we have to. The action tonight is they're trying to renew. It's the board's purview on whether they renew or not renew. One
Okay.
important note before I get on to anyone in the public is we don't have a quota on seasonal licenses. So we're not taking anything away that they already have. We had several public hearings and updates.
The Board of Health.
And, we've gone the distance to try and help. And I know I was one of the strong advocates for giving them a license 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And they haven't used it. And under our liquor regulations, if you don't use it, you can lose it. At the January 18th, 2023, the Board of Health meeting, the board voted to require a fully compliant septic system to be installed by June 1st, 2023 at 126 Route 28. The board also voted that the building is not to be occupied or operable until the certificate of compliance for the septic system has been issued. And to date, they've received nothing. Don?
Yeah, I just want to state for the record, if you look at the retail license renewal application, that Mr. Paulini, who had previously been designated and actually asked to be taken off the license, is listed as manager, and yet down below, Nicholas Fiorillo signs as the manager. We never approved a change of manager. So even that, I'm not sure if this is a valid request.
Yeah. Is there anyone, Joe?
To that point, I will tell you that the town has received a change of manager license, application, I should say. However, it would not come forward until there's an establishment for which to change the manager. Having said that, Mr. Fiorello is allowed to sign the form because he is a manager of the corporation. Secondly, Mr. Chairman, before you open up, I think it might help to add some additional information to the record if I could.
Go ahead.
So what the board, as the local licensing authority, is relying upon are materials in your packet. There are 4 pages, the first of which is, as was referenced previously, the standard retail license renewal form with information populated by the records of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts' Alcoholic Beverage Control Commission, and it was signed by the manager of the LLC on March 19th. Additionally, you have commentary from staff, which is your standard process. Commentary from the fire department is that the establishment is not in compliant at this time, and they identify 7 areas where the establishment is out of compliance. You additionally have commentary from your building commissioner indicating that no building permit applications have been submitted, and therefore is not in compliance, and as referenced before, the health department indicates that the establishment is not in compliance.
Thank you, Joe. Anyone in the public wish to speak on this? Anyone online? Joe, do you want a formal motion to deny?
So I think it would be appropriate at this time for the local licensing authority, if so desire, to make a motion to deny the application for the 2023 seasonal on-premise liquor license renewal for Chase Escape Cape Cod LLC, doing business as the Summer House Cafe, 126 Route 28, West Harwich.
And I would add to that motion that I will make, that having not achieved any of the milestones that we have requested, including building, Board of Health, and fire.
Fire. And that is your motion?
That is my motion to deny on the basis of that, of those items.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Just for the record, I think nobody on this board has said that they won't support this restaurant once they're able to open, but to continue to issue a liquor license and allow a licensee to try and dictate the rules and muscle their way into us not following the rules is a bad statement. So we're following our regulations.
That's why I wanted to go on record. with
All
the
in favor?
basis.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, 5-0. And next we have updates, sole business, 204 Sisson Road, West Harwich Baptist Church and Willow Street RFPs.
Absolutely. Yep. Sorry, Mr. Chairman, thank you. In your packet, I have a memorandum explaining the status of each of those. If you'd like, I can go through it.
Yes, please.
So 204 Sisson Road, the Assistant Town Administrator and Director of Cultural Affairs met last week and discussed a draft scope of services as well as the assessment criteria. I expect that the board will be presented with the complete RFP document for review at your meeting on Tuesday, April 18th. And that's because of the Monday holiday. You want me to continue or take questions, Mr. Chairman?
Questions, Larry?
Done.
Don?
Nope.
Mary?
Nope.
Julie?
Nope.
My only comment on that, Joe, is this is about, and I certainly give credit to the warrant and all of the negotiations, but there's an awful lot of people in that building with anxiety because we haven't done anything yet. It was about a month ago that we had the conversation about issuing an RFP. So if we have to wait until the 18th instead of next week, then so be it, but the sooner the better.
Understood.
Don?
Just to add to that, through you, Mr. Chair, this is not a skill set generally associated with the artist community. So I'm hoping that whatever it is that's put out there is fairly straightforward and simple to respond to, because it is not something, you know, that I would expect them to be conversant with, and frankly, anybody who's in the building should get a copy of it. Not that we're guaranteeing them anything, but that they should get a copy, because I'm not even sure they know how to get on a combis.
Joe, can you comment on distribution of this? I know we have to go on and advertise procurement laws, but is there anything prohibiting us from giving the current tenants a copy of this?
Rather than give them, we can have many copies provided over at 204 Sisson Road for anyone to pick up. We can put it on our website. So to that comment, to all the comments, I would look forward to your discussion on the 18th to finalize it. I think you'll be pleased with where we're at, and then we can broadly advertise in any way, shape, or form we see fit.
Thank you.
That's fine.
Set? Next one, Joe?
Thank you. Regarding the West Harwich Baptist Church, the Assistant Town Administrator is working with our housing advocate on this proposal project. A related request for proposals for appraisal work, which was the required next step, has been completed, and as of this writing, which was Friday, March 31st, we are in contract language review with the appraiser. Additionally, the housing advocate has completed the scope of services and assessment criteria with the oversight of the Assistant Town Administrator.
And when will we see that one?
So we have to rely upon the appraisal information to close it out, but I think we could give an update towards the end of the month, if not next month.
Thank you. Any questions, Larry?
No.
Don? Mary?
Nope, just anxious to see it.
Julie?
Yeah, none.
Go ahead, Joe.
And thank you. Last one on the list, 70 Willow Street. I've been working directly with Katie Klein, our attorney from KP Law. She's working within their tax title subcontractor, who is Marsh Moriarty, to ensure the town has clear title to 70 Willow Street prior to finalizing a request for proposal to dispose of the property. The town can use the proceeds from this RFP process to impact upon affordable housing as the Board of Selectmen determines to be most appropriate. So by that, I mean there could be a discussion if the board wants. Right now, you, the board, enjoy the vote of town meeting to dispose of the property for affordable housing, but if you wanted to strengthen that or narrow the focus of that, we would want to rely upon the RFP to do that.
Larry?
I guess the same question as the last note is, when do you expect to have the title, this work done?
Typically, they say title work runs roughly 6 to 8 weeks, and I believe they engaged that process 3 weeks ago. So we could be within the month.
Don?
I have nothing.
Julie?
Nothing.
Mary?
So that, based on that time frame, this is next year's town meeting, correct?
No, 70 Willow Street was already transferred to the care, custody, and control of the Board of Selectmen for
Okay,
you to dispose of it and to use the proceeds to support affordable housing. So it left it wide open for the board as to how you want to handle the proceeds.
okay,
But there's no further action on this required at town meeting.
okay, thank you.
So, Joe, for the strengthening of the RFP, would it be, that would include the board's direction to deposit the money in the Affordable Housing Trust, if that's an idea?
Sure, you could direct that. You could direct that it be placed into the Special Purpose Stabilization Fund for affordable housing, or really any action within those two.
With that said, Don?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I mean, it really doesn't make any difference because, God bless you. The trust can vote to allocate to virtually any project directly without the Board of Selectmen. So I mean, if you trust the trust, it can be deposited there for a future unknown project.
Larry?
That's a good point. It does bring up a note I made myself regarding the $1.2 million in stabilization fund that we're putting in, which is a great thing to happen. But we leave we've said that's going to be for affordable housing and for wastewater. Should that be more specific, say half and half or something? So it's not, there's no confusion in town meeting that we could all go somewhere. And, we've been preaching those two items being important to us. That leaves it wide open. We could, it might make it easier if we were to specify that in the warrant article explanation.
That brings up an interesting question, since we voted to close the warrant. That could be part of reconciliation the day of town meeting if we wanted to allocate X amount to each bucket. Correct, Joe? What's the thought process behind leaving it all with no designated amount to different stabilization funds?
So no, the purpose of that article is to split it in 3 parts to the general stabilization and both of those special purpose.
There'll be a statement.
So
at town- at
you
town
have
meeting.
the ability to do
Statement.
all 3 if you want. Really, the only question then would be, I believe it's 1.8 million that's set aside for that, how you want those dollars to be allocated. But
that
you
would-
presently have the ability, right now, it would just be the motion itself as to how to direct the funds.
Maybe we could make a motion then, that would clarify the town meeting that we're not, it's not gonna go one direction or the other.
Okay.
So you'll have that information well before town meeting because it's the motions of the board.
Okay.
Julie, anything on the strengthening the RFP by adding where we want the money to go?
I'm comfortable with us making those calls as we get, as we move forward.
No, that's related to the Willow Street one,
Oh, you're
unrelated to
talking-
the warrant.
Oh, yeah.
Do we want to make a statement to the town administrator tonight on where we would like that money to go? And I would vote
Yeah,
trust.
I would say, I kind of thought was the obvious choice, so,
Mary?
trust.
The Willow Street money,
Yeah.
correct? Yes.
Trust,
Trust.
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 Thank you.
Town administrators report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First, some encouraging news. I have submitted an offer, and an offer was accepted by Mr. Kenneth Watson. He joins us as a part-time, not to exceed 19 hours per week van driver, so that our Council on Aging Director, Julie Wittes, can keep the wheels turning for the vans for the various folks that require those services. I want to inform the board that I have executed a contract under Chapter 30B, utilizing the state contract, and this is with Partner Solutions General Contracting Corporation. These are, well, give me one quick second to tell you what it is.
It goes 4 minutes overdue.
So these are the janitorial services for our comfort stations. The bid process received one bidder. The bidder was the vendor that had the contract 2 years ago. Their performance was satisfactory to the town. The only reason they didn't bid the next time is they didn't have the resources. So we're great to have this vendor, it's great to have this vendor back because they did an exceptional job first go-around. Total value of the contract is $57,575.20.
Mary?
Just one question, Joe. Was there any way to get some later evening janitorial services at Red River Beach, July 4th?
Have to stay overnight.
So what I'd have to do is go through the particulars of the contract. I know we had discussed that, and I think it was a consideration of the town. I'd have to go back through that and report back out if I could.
Thanks, Joe.
Go ahead, Joe.
And the last thing I have to report is some bittersweet news. Bittersweet because, we talk about the town being an employer of choice, and we always want our employees to thrive and succeed. And there's no better example of that than our Assistant Conservation Agent, Melissa Millette, who has worked well. She, you may remember, started out as a temp in the administration department while she was finalizing her master's degree. She has now taken a job in the town of Provincetown for exactly what her master's degree is for. She's becoming the equivalent of our Amy Usowski. I know it's a bigger role than it is here, but it's exactly what she went to school for. She leaves us in the best possible way with mixed emotions, but it's a tremendous opportunity for her. It's great professional and personal growth for her. And we're going to miss her terribly, but as I often do, I say, please keep the lines of communication open. You never know. So I personally want to thank Melissa for her efforts and wish her well in the new endeavor. And I want to tip my cap to my counterpart in Provincetown. He made a real good hire. So we will miss her, but we wish her very well in her career.
Thank you, Joe. Selectmen's report, Larry?
Well, not really, except I take exception to Joe's. Equivalent to Amy, no one's equivalent to Amy, so.
Point well taken.
Don? Mary?
Just again, I'd like to thank the two meetings Michael and I were at last week, the Community Preservation Committee and the Planning Committee, for their diligence in tackling some big issues, and I really appreciate what they do.
Julie?
Congrats to Melissa, that's wonderful news for her. I want to report that a shout out to the building department's online permitting is working quite well. I applied for a permit, and it's been under review, and the communication has been good, and I've got a permit issued today. It's really great, they're doing a great job, so,
Was that from the cabana?
yeah, that was earlier while I was on the beach, yeah.
But it could have been.
But seriously, that's great news.
It is
That's
good
been a
news.
struggle forever.
No,
That's
and
fantastic.
And their communication's been great, and they're looking for feedback from everybody participating, which is great, too.
And I would just thank all the employees, town administrator, staff, everybody that's worked on the warrant and getting us to where we're tonight. That's a lot of work, and everybody, all the way down the line, should be thanked for that.
Thank you, and I'll pass all those comments along. We appreciate it.
Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.